I kept Yellowstone in first position, but it needed to stay on course.
Dances with Wolves was one of the defining films of the 1990s. A sweeping, emotional epic that won over audiences and swept the Oscars. But behind the scenes, the production spiraled out of control, burning through money, pushing the film to the brink, and driving investors away. When it was finally released, the film triggered severe backlash, controversy, and accusations that followed it for years. But none of that compares to what was happening on that set during the romance scenes. And what Mary McDonnell finally revealed about those moments will leave you stunned. The film was a gamble. Dances with Wolves won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and earned more than $420 million worldwide. The film revived a genre that had been declared dead for nearly 60 years. But behind that legendary success, strange things were happening. The movie almost did not get made at all. The director put his own money on the line and risked personal bankruptcy. And Hollywood insiders mocked the production as a disaster in the making. The story of Dances with Wolves actually began in a garage. A screenwriter named Michael Blake had an idea for a film about a Union soldier who befriended a wolf and fell in love with a white woman raised by Sioux Indians. He tried to sell the screenplay, but nobody wanted it. A friend of his, the legendary actor Kevin Costner, read the script and told Blake something that changed everything. Costner said he would only buy the script if Blake turned it into a novel first. Costner believed the story needed to prove itself on the page before anyone would trust it on the screen. So Blake went to work. He wrote the novel while sleeping on friends' couches, including Costner's garage. He later admitted that he wrote the entire book in his car, really. The process was grueling, and when the manuscript was finished, the rejection letters started piling up. More than 30 publishers turned the book down before a small publisher called Fawcett finally accepted it. The novel came out in 1988, and it found an audience. Finally, Blake had the proof Costner wanted. Costner walked into a conference room at a Los Angeles studio with the script in hand. He told the executives the film would cost $20 million and that he would be directing it himself. The executives stared at him like he had announced his own career funeral. Costner was a movie star, yes, but he had never directed anything before. $20 million was a massive budget for a period piece about a subject that Hollywood had no interest in. To make matters worse, the Western genre had been dead for a decade. The infamous film Heaven's Gate had bankrupted United Artists in 1980, and every major studio had been terrified of Westerns ever since. Hollywood insiders mockingly referred to Costner's project as Kevin's Gate, a direct reference to that disaster. Orion Pictures eventually agreed to fund the film, but the deal came with brutal conditions. Costner had to forfeit his $3 million upfront salary. He also had to sign a deal holding him personally financially liable for any budget overruns. His agent warned him that bankruptcy would follow if the film failed. Costner signed anyway. He signed without negotiating a single term. Finding a director was just as difficult. Costner asked 3 prominent directors to helm the project before him. Each one wanted to remove key elements from the script. One said to cut the entire Civil War sequence. Another called the white woman character a cliché and wanted her removed entirely. Costner refused every time. He finally directed the film by default, as he later admitted, because nobody else would do it the way he wanted. He knew he was not as good as any of those other directors, but he also knew he would not leave anything out. Production began in South Dakota in July 1989, and the problems started immediately. Investors threatened to pull their financing. The cinematographer, Dean Semler, told Costner that waiting for perfect light would ruin the shooting schedule. Costner looked at the ridge they needed to film and said that the schedule would break, not the scene. By the end of production, the film had gone roughly $1.8 million over budget and ran 23 to 30 days over schedule. The whole thing was hanging on by a thread. Then came the first test screening in 1990. The audience sat in silence as the credits rolled. Then they applauded for a full minute. The film that Hollywood had mocked, the Western that everyone said would fail, the gamble that could have bankrupted its star, became one of the biggest hits of the year. It earned more than $420 million worldwide. At the 63rd Academy Awards, it won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. It was only the second Western to win that award since Cimarron in 1931, a gap of 59 years. Michael Blake, the man who had written the novel in his car, published a sequel called The Holy Road in 2001, set 11 years after the original and dealing with increasing conflict between the Plains Indians and white settlers. But long before that sequel arrived, something strange was already happening behind the scenes of the first film. The casting process was filled with odd choices and near misses that most fans have never noticed, and the actors who lived through it have spoken up about what really happened. Weird casting facts most people missed. When audiences think about the casting of Dances with Wolves, they usually remember the big choices. Kevin Costner as Lieutenant Dunbar, Mary McDonnell as Stands with a Fist, Graham Greene as Kicking Bird. Those decisions made sense on paper and worked beautifully on screen. But underneath those obvious choices, there was a web of strange casting decisions that most viewers never noticed. Some of them were accidents, some were inside jokes, and one of them would turn into a scandal decades later that no one could have predicted. Take the relationship between Mary McDonnell and Graham Greene, for example. On screen, McDonnell plays Stands with a Fist, a white woman raised by the Lakota people after her family was murdered. Greene plays Kicking Bird, the wise spiritual leader who becomes her adoptive father. The age difference between the characters is supposed to be substantial. Kicking Bird is an elder. Stands with a Fist is a young woman. But here is what the filmmakers did not tell audiences. Mary McDonnell was actually 2 months older than Graham Greene in real life. That means the actress playing the daughter was technically older than the actor playing her father. The casting department simply ignored reality because both performers were so right for their roles. The age confusion did not stop with Greene. Tantu Cardinal played Black Shawl, Kicking Bird's wife, and Stands with a Fist's adoptive mother. Cardinal was less than 2 years older than McDonnell, so the on-screen mother and daughter were almost exactly the same age. Nobody noticed during the film because the performances were so powerful, but the casting choices required everyone to pretend that a woman in her 30s was the mother of a woman in her 30s. It made no logical sense, and it worked perfectly anyway. The opening scene of the film takes place in a Civil War hospital. A wounded Union lieutenant lies on a cot while doctors examine him. Most viewers assumed the doctors were professional actors hired for the day, but they were not. The doctor standing on the left side of the frame is actually Jim Wilson, the film's producer. The doctor on the right side is Kevin Costner himself, buried under heavy bandages with his face barely visible. Costner's voice was dubbed over by other actors in that scene, which is why nobody recognizes him. The star of the film was in the opening shot the whole time, hiding in plain sight, and almost no one ever knew it. Costner brought his family to the South Dakota location, and his 6-year-old daughter Annie ended up with a small but memorable role. She played the young version of Christine, the character who grows up to become Stands with a Fist. The scene required young Christine to run away from Pawnee warriors who had just killed her family. There was just one problem. Annie could not tell her left from her right at age 6. The director kept telling her to look over her left shoulder, but she kept looking over her right shoulder because she could not remember which was which. The crew found it adorable, and they eventually worked around the issue. Cindy Costner, Kevin's wife at the time, stayed on location to help keep the 6-year-old comfortable during the shoot. Another striking detail most fans missed was that the wolf character, Two Socks, was played by not one, but 2 different wolves. Their names were Buck and Teddy. Using multiple animals for a single character is standard practice in filmmaking because animals have limited stamina, and different personalities work better for different scenes. Buck and Teddy split the duties, and together they created one of the most memorable animal performances in cinema history. Most viewers never noticed the swap because both wolves looked similar enough on camera. The production simply asked the audience to believe that one wolf was doing everything, when in reality, 2 wolves shared the credit. One of the smaller roles in the film went to an actor named Nathan Lee Chasing Horse, who played a Sioux tribe member called Smiles a Lot. It was a minor part, the kind of role that most actors forget about after the movie comes out. But decades later, Nathan Lee became the center of a scandal that no one saw coming. In January 2023, he was arrested in Las Vegas on multiple felony charges. Police identified him as the believed leader of a cult known as the Circle. The investigation began when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police tipped off Las Vegas police that Nathan Lee had been named as a suspect in a 2018 assault case in Canada. The charges against him included serious offenses that shocked everyone who remembered him from the film. But the strangest part of the Dances with Wolves story is not just about who was cast. It's about what happened once the cameras started rolling. The production was a nightmare, with weather that would not cooperate, animals that would not behave, and a director who refused to compromise no matter how badly things went wrong. The production was a nightmare. The casting oddities were strange enough, but they were nothing compared to what happened once filming actually began. The production of Dances with Wolves turned into a test of endurance that pushed everyone to their limits. Perhaps the most terrifying disaster involved the buffalo herd. The production had rented a herd of live buffalo for the famous stampede sequence, and to keep them contained, the crew built 20 miles of fencing across the South Dakota plains. But then a real storm rolled in, the kind of violent weather that the prairie is known for, and it destroyed every single mile of that fencing. The entire herd scattered across the countryside. Each animal cost the production $1,400 a day just to rent. So losing them was not just a logistical nightmare, but a financial catastrophe. Costner did not send someone else to fix the problem. He climbed on a horse himself and spent hours helping the wranglers track down the scattered animals. When he finally returned to set, covered in dust and exhausted, he told the crew that they would roll again because the story came first. The buffalo stampede sequence also led to one of the most expensive camera disasters in film history. To get the shots that Costner wanted, the crew buried cameras in trenches so the herd would run directly over them. The plan worked exactly as intended, which was also the problem. The buffalo destroyed 4 cameras during the stampede. That single sequence cost roughly $2.5 million to film, and most of that money went to replacing equipment that had been crushed by angry animals. Costner refused to move the cameras back or change the method. He told the crew that he wanted to feel the ground shake because the audience needed to feel it too. The crew probably hated the idea, but they kept digging trenches and losing cameras until he got his shots. The weather in South Dakota did not cooperate either. The production endured temperatures ranging from over 100 degrees down to 20 degrees, sometimes in the same week. This created a nightmare for continuity. One scene was shot in pouring rain with mud everywhere. And the very next morning, the crew shot a scene that was supposed to take place on the same day. The ground had dried out overnight, and dust was flying everywhere instead of mud. Anyone watching closely can spot the inconsistency, but most viewers are too caught up in the story to notice. The language barrier presented an entirely different kind of problem. The production hired a linguist to translate the script into Lakota, but that linguist made a critical mistake. He omitted certain grammatical rules for gender because he thought they were too complex for the actors to learn. When native speakers saw the finished film, they noticed something weird immediately. The warriors were technically speaking in a feminine form. It was like watching a group of tough soldiers talk like schoolgirls. Most audience members had no idea, but for Lakota speakers, it was a bizarre error that never should have happened. The production did have a real Lakota translator on set, a woman named Doris Leader Charge, who played the minor role of Pretty Shield and was a professor at St. Iglesia University. But by the time she was brought in, some of the damage had already been done. The working conditions were brutal by any standard. The crew worked 16-hour days under extreme conditions, and some of them simply walked off the job rather than endure another day. Investors threatened to pull their financing multiple times, terrified that Costner was sinking their money into a disaster. At one point, the entire production was hanging on by a thread, and everyone knew it. Despite all of these nightmares, the finished film felt like nothing else that had ever come out of Hollywood. But the struggles of the production were not the only things that fans missed. Once the movie was released, eagle-eyed viewers started noticing strange inconsistencies hiding in plain sight, and mistakes that should never have made it into the final cut. Weird production mistakes and inconsistencies. The filming conditions were brutal, and the cast suffered through all of them. But what the crew did not realize at the time was how many small mistakes were making their way into the final cut. Audiences have watched Dances with Wolves for more than 30 years, and most of them have never noticed the errors hiding in plain sight. Once you know where to look, however, the film becomes a completely different experience. Take the scene where Lieutenant Dunbar feeds the wolf 2 socks by hand. It looks like a peaceful moment between a man and a wild animal. But what happened between tells a different story. 2 Socks was a real trained wolf dog, and in the middle of filming, the animal actually bit the trainer's leg. The trainer had to jump in between cuts to free himself, and if you watch the scene closely, you can see him visible in the background. The moment of calm on screen was preceded by a moment of genuine danger off-screen. The same scene features a piece of beef jerky that seems to have magical powers. Dunbar offers the wolf a piece of meat, and the meat changes shape and size dramatically throughout the sequence. It starts one size, gets smaller, then gets larger again, all without anyone on screen acknowledging the transformation. Most viewers are watching the wolf and the actor, not the meat, so the mistake has gone unnoticed for decades. The river fight scene contains one of the most obvious errors in the entire film. An actor playing a dead Pawnee warrior is lying face up in the water when a cast member splashes water onto his face. The dead warrior visibly flinches and blinks in the final cut. He was supposed to be dead, but he reacted like a living person who had just gotten water in his eyes. The editors left it in anyway. The character Timmons provides a running gag of mistakes that most fans have never caught. When Timmons and Dunbar first arrive at Fort Sedgwick, Timmons is eating an egg. In one shot, only part of an egg is on his knife. In the very next shot, the egg on his knife is whole again. Later in the same scene, after Dunbar says a line about not knowing what happened, shots of Timmons alternate between having no egg on his face and having a lot of egg on his face, especially on the tip of his nose. The egg appears, and disappears like a ghost. The film's violence also defies the laws of physics. When Kevin Costner gets hit on the head and knocked unconscious, blood runs down his nose. But here is the problem. He was lying down horizontally when he was struck. Gravity should have pulled the blood toward his ears, not down his nose. The blood flows in the wrong direction entirely, and once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. Costume continuity also fell apart in several places. Dunbar's jacket has yellow officer tabs on the shoulder for the cavalry. But after he gives the jacket to Wind in his hair, the officer tabs are now blue for infantry. The jacket magically changed branches of service between scenes. The editing department also made some curious choices as well. When Kicking Bird tries to steal Cisco and Dunbar frightens him away, Kicking Bird falls over the fence. His horse runs off to his right. But when Kicking Bird jumps up and runs, he runs left, and suddenly his horse is waiting for him there, standing still. The horse teleported across the screen between shots, and most fans completely missed it. The death of Timmons features a similar magic trick. When Timmons is being shot by the Pawnee, there is one shot where he has 3 arrows in him. The scene cuts away and quickly returns, and now he has 4 arrows. Timmons simply gained an arrow in the editing room. These mistakes are small, and most viewers never notice them on first watch. But while the production mistakes were embarrassing, they were nothing compared to the scandals that followed the film after it left theaters. Some of the actors who appeared in Dances with Wolves saw their lives take dark turns with legal troubles, criminal charges, and downward spirals that no one could have predicted when the cameras were rolling in South Dakota. The scandals and controversies that followed the film. The production mistakes were easy to laugh about, but what came after the film's release was no laughing matter. Dances with Wolves was celebrated as a film that honored Native American culture and treated the Lakota Sioux with dignity and respect. Kevin Costner accepted his Oscars and his praise, and everyone assumed the goodwill between the filmmaker and the tribe would last forever. That assumption turned out to be wrong. A few years after the film became a phenomenon, Costner found himself accused of betraying the very people who had helped make his movie a success. The promise seemed sincere at first. Costner told the Lakota Sioux community that he wanted to help them by building a resort near the Black Hills in South Dakota, a resort specifically designed to create jobs for the tribe. The land in question was a parcel of 630 acres of federal property in the Black Hills, a place that the Sioux consider sacred because they believe it was illegally seized by the United States government in 1877. Costner and his brother Dan were already building a resort worth more than $100 million in Deadwood, and they wanted that federal parcel for the compound's planned golf course. The Forest Service was supposed to decide whether to let Costner trade the sacred land for a different site, about 12 miles from Deadwood. The Lakota Sioux were not fooled. One elder named Sidney Keith said that Costner just wanted to make himself more powerful, greater, and bigger. Another activist named Madonna Thunderhawk called it a betrayal, saying that Costner was making millions on their backs. The timing of the controversy did not help Costner's image. It erupted in 1995, right when he was promoting Waterworld and facing questions about that film's massive budget overruns. Some Sioux began calling the proposed golf course Costner's Field of Green, a bitter joke about a man who had made a fortune pretending to honor their culture and was now trying to take their sacred land for a luxury resort. Costner's spokesperson defended the project by arguing that the critics represented only a vocal minority. He said the resort would improve an 85-acre site that used to be a salvage yard, and he added that the Costners viewed all land as sacred. The controversy eventually faded, but the damage to Costner's reputation among the Lakota Sioux never fully healed. The man who had made Dances with Wolves was now seen by some as just another businessman trying to profit off their ancestors' suffering. The film also inspired a different kind of controversy, one that had nothing to do with Costner personally. Following the film's Best Picture Oscar win in April 1991, Newsweek magazine reported that many Native American reservations had begun re-evaluating policies regarding toxic waste dumping on their lands. Activists and protesters began calling toxic waste proposals dances with garbage, a direct mockery of the film's title. The irony was crushing. A film celebrated for honoring Native American culture and land was being used as a protest slogan against tribes allowing their own land to be poisoned by industrial waste. The scandals and controversies surrounding Dances with Wolves were bad enough, but they were not the only secrets that the cast kept hidden for decades. There was something much more personal that happened between the two lead actors during the romance scenes. What Mary McDonnell has revealed about those intimate moments will change how viewers see those scenes forever. The truth about the romance scenes. The scandals and controversies that followed the film were public and messy, but there was one secret that stayed hidden for years. It involved the romance between Lieutenant Dunbar and Stands with a Fist, the love story at the heart of the movie. Audiences assumed the intimate scenes were exactly what the writer had imagined, but they were not. Mary McDonnell, the actress who played Stands with a Fist, was extremely nervous about shooting her intimate scene with Kevin Costner. The original script called for something much more explicit, and McDonnell was not comfortable with what the writer had put on the page. So she reportedly asked that the scene be toned down from what was written. Costner, who was also the director, listened to her concerns and adjusted the scene to her comfort level. The final result became one of the most tastefully done romance scenes in Western film history. There was no awkwardness, no exploitation, nothing that made audiences feel uncomfortable. It was believable and respectful, and that was exactly because McDonnell had spoken up about what she needed. McDonnell has stated in interviews that Costner was professional throughout the process and that he created a safe environment for the scenes. Despite their on-screen chemistry, there was no off-screen romance between the two actors. McDonnell was married to actor Randall Mell in 1984, and they remained together until his death in 2023. The romance between the two characters became one of the most praised elements of the film. One reviewer noted that the combination of drama, romance, action, and even some necessary humor made the movie click in ways that few Westerns ever had. But not everyone was pleased with how the romance was portrayed. The film faced criticism for what some called the white savior trope, a white man rescuing a Native American woman who had been saved from savagery. One reviewer called the film horribly biased and said that Costner was famous for this sort of thing, where all white soldiers except the hero are portrayed as sleazy, profane, cruel, or insane. The criticism had some merit. The film does present Dunbar as uniquely enlightened among white men, and Stands with a Fist does need to be rescued by him in several key moments. But the film also gave Native American characters more dignity and complexity than almost any Hollywood movie before it. The debate over whether Dances with Wolves deserves praise or criticism for its portrayal of race relations has never really been settled. The truth about the romance scenes is simple. McDonnell was nervous. Costner listened. The scene got toned down, and the film was better for it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.